We are live. If you are joining us live, I just want to let you know this morning how to go ahead and engage with us and leave comments before we get started. So if you head over to streamyard.com/Facebook, you have to do something transparently, not sure what, but do the thing it asks you to do, and then you can leave comments. I'm going to check in kind of at the end about the comments, so just type along, talk to us as I talk to Priscilla. I'll introduce to you in a second, and we'll touch in with you at the end to take a look at your comments and questions and dive into those. So if you don't know me, my name is Morgan Sheets. I'm founder of Live Well, Be Well, Do Good, and I am a media consultant and master wellness coach that is on a mission to live well, be well, do good in my own life and empower other women to do the same. And today joining me, I have a guest that I'm very, very excited to introduce to you, that our meet cute in movie terms, so to speak, I feel is so in alignment with her work that as a relationship is involved, it's just alignment is a word you're going to probably hear me say and probably Priscilla say. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Priscilla Stephan. She's an intuitive business coach and the creator of the Soulfluent Leadership Archetypes. So let's talk to Priscilla more. Priscilla.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It was such a treat.
So typically I start off by asking the question, but I actually feel like I'm going to ask you instead, where do you feel called to start sharing about your work?
Yeah, I think what's coming up for me as a question is, it's a question I ask myself daily, and it's not, you're not supposed to necessarily feel like you have an answer, but like, what does contribution mean to you? How do you want to make a difference this year? And what's calling to you next? And those are just inquiries. It can be life, business, relationships, ways of being. What's really showing up in terms of, God, this really matters, or this is something I really want to explore or release or dive into or lean into more. Part of the Soulfluent work is to lead with clarity, confidence, and courage. So maybe, is there an area that you want to feel clearer about, more confident about, or be more courageous about? Maybe having tough conversations, or putting your work out there, or speaking on podcasts more, or losing weight, just feeling fitter. What does that look like? Maybe listening or to this, your soul or a spiritual part of you more. Not from a gotta do it or a should or any of the thing, but like, what's that real pull? So that's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm feeling like, so we're tapping into, okay, we're going to ask ourselves these questions and we're going to lead from our soul. And I know when I was in that journey, it was really, when I was starting that journey, it was really challenging because I'd have this like lifetime of programming of listening to, like my mind and society. And I was like, okay, I know that's not the way and I want to go this other way. But sometimes when you're on that path, just starting out, it can be hard to discern like what is my soul and what is not. So I'm guessing, and I want to check in with you, is people like leaning into your work and discovering their archetype that they have. Does that, if they're new to their soul listening journey, so to speak, is that a good place for them to start to kind of have like a pillar and a foundation to start building on?
Absolutely. I find that just like with probably any kind of personality test, or it's like, there'll be parts that you resonate with and you go, oh, good. I'm not crazy. That makes sense. And there are the parts where you're like, not sure about that one, or I don't see how it fits. I think that just staying open can really give you insights into yourself and permission, really. I think a lot of it is to do things your way, to be yourself. For me, finding out that I was a mystic gave me so much more permission to not do as much in my work because I didn't have to prove much or stuff content or teach things. I could just be, okay, I'm a channel and I really hold space well for people. So what if that is what I get really well paid to do? And that's how I structure my offers, and that's how I structure my marketing, and that's how I structure how I show up. I lead with those, with the intuitive and the healing abilities that feel true to me. And so it just gave me so much permission to not try to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, and it sounds like you kind of had like a guidepost, like I like to call it like a lighthouse sometimes, or an anchor. Yeah. Like this is me when I'm stepping out of here. I know that I'm stepping out of alignment, not me. So I think and just so everybody else knows, I took Priscilla's quiz, and I'm also a mystic, which was so affirming as well to hear the things that she's sharing about myself, because I wasn't familiar with her work or the archetype. And I know if I had known this like 5 years ago, it would have given me that permission that she's talking about to lean into, like, I knew these things intuitively deep down in myself. Like my journals are filled with mystical, like from the archetype.
Really?
Words. Yeah. But because there wasn't a framework out there, like I'd taken all these other personality types and everything else, like you're talking about. I am a quiz enthusiast. I don't want to say fanatic.
Yeah, it's
but
fun.
I love them. Yeah. It's very fun. But none of them told me about that part of myself. So you mentioned, we can feel like we're a little bit crazy or wonder if we're on track if we don't know this. And I'd love for you to kind of dive into that archetype more with people and share with us what your soulfluent leadership archetype is about, and what some of the other types are beyond the mystic.
Yes, so let me answer those, and also say, as a former holistic health coach, I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I believe in live well, be well, and do good. And I was telling you just beforehand that I feel like many people in the wellness and fitness spaces are mystics by design, not always, but mystics are here to use their intuitive healing and creative abilities to elevate consciousness and to promote harmony and well-being.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And so hence the color green, which I love. And that can take many shapes and forms. And the quiz is a way for you to learn the dominant archetype from which you have been operating. Right. And now archetypes can shift. Thank you. Yeah, you can take the quiz at priscillastephan.com/quiz. It takes 3 minutes. It's free. And then when people come to work with me later, we identify, is this still the archetype that is best suited to support you in this current next phase of your business and season of life? Or are we going to shift gears, so to speak, into a different archetype? Which then brings me into what is Soulfluent leadership, and what are the archetypes? So Soulfluent is, imagine being fluent in the language of your soul, right? It's really, to me, Soulfluent is, my definition of it so far is living in the energy of your soul's language. So how do you figure out what is the energy of your soul's language? It's your archetype. And I have 5 archetypes in the Soulfluent body of work. There's the mystic, which we are, both. The visionary, which is just a disruptor and here to create massive change by questioning the status quo. Then we have the strategist, which is, they imagine like people in technology or finance or law or academia who are very data and process driven. They streamline very complicated processes and procedures and analyze data in such a way that that's digestible for us. And that really support the greater good. And there's the explorer, who's all about possibility. Everyone loves the explorer. They're adventurers. They love to connect with people, and they live and lead experientially. Whereas the mystic sometimes can be like, I don't know, I'm not sure I'm ready. The explorer is like, okay, how quickly can we try this, right? Because we're only going to learn and know by trying. And so they out there, they travel, they try things, they connect with people. And then there's the divine feminine, which leads through collaboration and community. It's really, their mantra is together we rise, right? Stronger together. It's fascinating to see them. So, for example, if you are a mystic, right? Let's say I'm kind of trying to understand this for myself, is that, sometimes we may identify, for me as a mystic, I think always identify myself as a mystic first. But perhaps, as I grow my business further, I may be guided to really embrace, let's say, the visionary archetype, for example, right? So it doesn't mean that I'm abandoning my mystic. It means that almost like if you're like in the city with the car gears, like you're going into first, second, third gears, and then all of a sudden when you're in the highway, you got to go into fifth gear, right? Because you're at a different speed, you're at a different place, right? You're not going to just, And so what that means is that your car is still the same, but where you're driving it and how you're getting there is different. And so I'm still going to be a mystic using my intuitive abilities, but as a visionary, it might mean that usually to me, it means that the message is bolder and louder and stands out and is more polarizing, more disruptive. It also means that the business model most likely will be even more leveraged and even more streamlined and for more groups and larger amounts of people. And so usually if the archetype changes, it informs of your messaging, your marketing, your business model, and how are you showing up and running the business? Like, what do you need to lead with? What are the ingredients in this recipe now that you need to make sure are in the recipe so your cake bakes and it doesn't deflate, or it doesn't take longer to bake than before. And the thing is that we have all of these 5 archetypes, right? So archetypes represent a set of energies, patterns, beliefs, and programming that's in the collective unconsciousness, right? So think of like warrior, magician, alchemist, goddess. We all have these somehow within us. And understanding the energy gives us an access point deeper into ourselves, right? Because we are energetic beings, right? And so when you access the energy, think of the energy of a warrior or think of the energy of a goddess, right? You feel something, you can connect to it, right? On a visceral level. And so the same thing with the Soulfluent archetypes is that when you can understand the energy of the archetype, you can access these parts of yourself that are already built in so that you can then integrate them, embody them, and apply them to life, business, relationships, or whatever you're looking to create next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that explanation. I mean, we have all of the different archetypes or energies, so to speak, right? Because we're whole, we have them all, and we just kind of lean into what we need. Like I can hear for me, from your description of the archetypes, I know that in the season I'm currently in, I'm actually more leading from the space of visionary, I can hear, and the divine feminine. And then in my personal life, I'm very much an explorer. And I'm kind of like that in the business, but to me, I just noticed that I like to let different parts of my personality come to play in different parts of my life. So I could really see that I'm the explorer a lot. When I have time off, I'm like, let's try this. But that's also my approach to business. Like I'm analytical, I'm visionary. I look at gaps, I see what's not needed, and then I'm very much willing to experiment. So it's really interesting to analyze myself while I was listening to you and make sense of what you're talking about. And it feels very accurate in how you're describing it. I especially love like that gear analogy. I started driving a standard. I don't know if anybody else out there did, but
I had to learn first that way. So yes, I understand how it works. I know.
Yeah, so like the whole time I was picturing that little map in my head, and I'm like, okay, what do I need right now? Do I need first gear, like you talked about? Where am I going? And I think that's a very accessible way of describing it, which I love. So thank you for that breakdown.
I had to ask the guys because I'm like, how do I describe this? Like they're like, how about a gear shift, in a car first? Like if you're in this urban setting, you're not going to go very far. So you're going to have to stay in the first few gear shifts and keep shifting, right? But if you're on the highway, you're going to have to go faster, right? So you're on 4th and 5th gear. It's a different environment. Different environment requires different tools.
Exactly.
Gears.
And so, I mean, I think that's really what I'm hearing you say too, when you brought up the great questions that you did earlier, like, you know, what kind of contribution do I want to make? You know, the clarity, the courage. You know, you're establishing an environment, so to speak, to operate from with those questions. Like the questions create the framework, and then knowing your archetype and the different archetypes, you can then take those questions and that framework and let it guide you into choosing how you drive. Like, now that we have advanced cars, which still blows my mind. My fiance has a Range Rover, and so everything's pre-programmed. We have this dashboard on the screen. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. If if we had like a little chart of your archetypes, like I'm going to look at the menu. And if we're in snow, it's just like I push the snow button, like it's that advanced.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, or like you said, highway. So I think that's just such a helpful framework, and I'm never going to look at our car the same.
Oh dear.
In a good way.
Yeah. And let me just say this really quickly, because I came up with this morning. I know it can sound odd because I'm still trying to explain Soulfluent to myself and to others. And I want to speak to the do good part of your work: live well, be well, and do good. And Soulfluent Leadership, one of its core promises, it's guiding leaders to create a world that works for everyone, where everyone thrives, right? And so the way I think of Soulfluent Leadership is soul-driven contribution that supports the greater good. So when you're making your choices in business, in particular, which is my wheelhouse primarily, but it could be in a company too, it's looking at how is this choice affecting, what's the ripple effect of this choice? And how is it affecting our supply chain, our team members, our company brand, our clients, our customers, the environment, right? It looks at everything. It doesn't discount, oh, it's okay, we'll make profits, but we'll pollute, or we're going to do this new thing, but we're going to completely burn out our employees, or we're going to say okay to a product that we know isn't great, but it'll make us money, so screw it if the customer gets harmed or doesn't like it as much, right? No, it creates that win. It's like, and so it really creates it's a different way of thinking. It's an elevated way of leading. And leadership is defined in the work as contribution. So we're all leaders because we all contribute, right? At home, it's equal across industries, countries, sexes, all of it. Right. And so it's just important to remember that there is this element here that we get to do good in our leadership too. And I always say, not out of a place of obligation or should, but from a place of conscious choice and desire.
Yes. My soul is so happy. It's like, finally, I know someone that speaks its language, like my language.
Yes.
I actually, coming back to the name, and how you explain the do good aspect in your 360 work, like I've received a lot of flack in my journey to grow my business. I started off in 2013, I started my company, and in 2015, I started off as Living Well Enterprises, which is still my official business name. And then I added on the live well, be well, do good. And it came to me just in meditation, and people have said, well, do good is a judgment call. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's why my logo is an equation. Because when you're grounded in this type of work that you're talking about, and your model, that Soulfluent leadership model, if you're focused on living well, like you're describing, how do I show up in my community? Whether it's how you treat the person that you're buying your coffee from, or like when I'm grocery shopping and I'm tall, so I'm like the rescuer of all short ladies grocery shopping. They're like, I can't reach. Like, how do you treat that person? Like, there's the contribution we make needs to be looked at on the micro and macro, and that's what I think your work really reflects. And what I love is when we're looking at ourselves and creating the best life for ourselves. That's why I say, for me, I'm on a mission to live well, be well, do good, and help others do the same. Because I think your work really helps people to start with themselves, which is what I believe in as well. And when we do that, when we create from that space, then the outcome is good, that 360 win. So it's not like a judgment, good, bad. It's the product of these other things, and you're in business, and I would love to talk about this some more because I know that you really work to help people scale. And I think this may be a good segue to lean into it, but in business, that's how I look at it. Like the doing good is a byproduct of, is your work in alignment with who you are? Like, are you using your gifts to benefit other people? And then just kind of using like me as a 360 win, like I'm in the position of media, probably like you're in the position of helping other business owners, because when we help the change makers, the ripples we make are so much bigger. And then the outcome when our clients come to us and work with us, it's like the success, like when they win, because they have a business model that is making a positive contribution in the world, like the world wins. And that's what, I'm such a fan of your work.
That's amazing.
That 360 win is success, and it's so important. So, I know there's a lot of work still to be done out there in breaking out of this old leadership model. And I just want to share, I have just a printout.
Oh my gosh.
Priscilla has this amazing graphic. You'll have to tell people where it's at. I don't remember where
it's on my website. So at priscillastephan.com, and then under about, you'll see what is Soulfluent Leadership. And there's this table there that talks to you about, shows you kind of traditional leadership, which I loosely define as ego-driven. It's about me, right? Mm-hmm. Like ego and success and pushing through. And then there's Soulfluent Leadership, which I call the soul-driven or 360 win. 360 win is where everyone wins. And that's more about being inclusive and sustainable and nourishing and inspired, right? And collaborative and proactive. I'm reading through it, fulfilling. Again, it goes back to, I think so many of us have burned out, myself included, and especially those of us in the wellness field who have had such big hearts, and we give so much, right? And we want to help people, but it sometimes comes at our own expense, right? We work too many hours. Sometimes our boundaries can be a little loose. Sometimes we don't raise our prices when we know it's kind of time to do it, or change the business model so it's a little bit more maybe group or do it yourself or done with you instead of one-on-one time all the time. And so we end up, Soulfluent Leadership makes sure that you are well, and you are living well, so that you can bring the best of you, the best of your well, to fill up our wells, right?
Ooh, I love that version of well. I didn't even think of that word play, like an actual well that you draw from.
I know, exactly. Yeah, it just came to me out of the blue. So I love chatting because it just comes out of me. I'm like, why can't I think of these when I need to think of it? But it just blurs. The other thing I want to say about the do good and the pushback, and I often think about, many people can't afford organic food, right? There's a premium to the do good part of things. But here's what I want to say is that there's always an opportunity to do good, and it doesn't have to look any particular way. And the idea of supporting the greater good or doing good, to me, is an invitation to explore, is this something I'm interested in? What could this look like for me if I really want to support the greater good?
Yeah.
And what could be my next step, right? So it's an invitation. It is never an obligation. You don't have to do anything. I would never tell someone, maybe that's not the season in life. Maybe you need to your leadership is your self-leadership and contributing to your own well-being and taking care of yourself. Like I have a client who has a 5-month-old baby. Like she needs to focus on nesting and taking care of herself and taking care of the baby right now. That is leadership. That is contribution. It doesn't mean you go out and write a book and you're going to change the world and, open SpaceX or something. No, and I think that is the challenge, and it is also the opportunity to explore for ourselves, to ask the deeper questions from a place of curiosity. Is this something? Is this timely? Is this for me? Is this for now? Is this something I really want to do? And if it's not, great. But then you're consciously choosing. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Going back to that permission.
Permission to not do it at all, or it's not the thing and it's not your thing. Okay, then.
Yeah, there's no one right way. And one of my favorite quotes is coming in right now to keep in mind, and it changed my life, and I think it really is in alignment with your work, and it's by Rumi. And when I was making that shift myself from being a burned out healer to a more empowered person and putting myself first, this quote from Rumi came to me, and it said something like, I'm terrible at exactly saying it, so I'll paraphrase, and he says something like, first I wanted to change the world, but then I became wise and I decided to change myself. And that, I think if we're not living from that place, and I want to kind of bring it back around to your leader. Sorry for everybody that sees me think off. I'm a highly visual person, so I like seeing pictures and words, and I'm like looking at my thoughts in my brain. But I want to check in with you about the leadership, but to me, it feels like if we're not taking the time to honor our needs, like that mom with the 5-year-old, and giving ourselves permission to find our own path, then we really can't be in a place of power. And leadership, I guess the question here is, I want to see how you feel and how it fits in your model, like leadership and power, and your personal power and empowering yourself. And then there was no clear question, but
yeah, I was on a podcast interview last week, and I blurted it out again. I think these podcasts are great because I share stuff that's buried in my own well. And I said, when we understand ourselves better, we do better. We choose better. And I think that this work is all about self-awareness. Know thyself, right? We've seen quotes out there that talk about this by lots of famous people. When you just know yourself, start with yourself. Because I think a big part of deconstructing this concept of male, hierarchical, stuffy leadership notions of like, you've got to be all the things, is to look internally and say, what is already here that is magical and brilliant, and the superpowers, right? That we all have, and each of the archetypes have. I mean, I've learned to deeply appreciate each of them, especially the strategist, which I could not get my head around. But my husband is a software engineer, and I was like, oh my God, they're so damn brilliant. We so need them. And so it helps us to not only understand ourselves, but it helps us to understand how and where we fit into the world in terms of making that contribution. And it then also gives us permission to appreciate others that have different talents and allow them to embrace and appreciate us. And so I'm saying this because, comparison is a bitch, and it's very common, right? Especially in entrepreneurship. It's like, I'm not there yet. Why doesn't my business look like this or that? So if we can start by appreciating, right, filling our own well of what's already here versus what's not here, then it's empowering, because it builds that confidence piece to know, okay, I got stuff here. And now let me ask and see how I want to apply that and integrate it into the work I do, whether it be in a company setting, organization, nonprofit, community, organization, or a startup, or an enterprise. So it really is that permission to be aware, right? Know thyself on a true, deep level.
Yes. So now the question probably some people are here for, we're going to lead into knowing thyself and take that into, people, again, that are really looking to scale. I know you really help people move from that 6-figure to 7-figure space. And I guess, what are some of the things that they typically have to do to make that happen in the soul-aligned way?
Yes, thank you. I love how you called it the Soulfluent way. Yeah, so it starts with asking those expansive questions to yourself, right? Because there can be many ways to grow a business. But what is the way? So here's some questions. This is my favorite question, regardless of whether you're in the multi-six, whatever, or wherever you are. How do you want to be feeling in your business? So what do you want your day-to-day experience to feel like when you are actively running and engaged in your business, right? Which is like, how does you want to feel? For me, it's simple. I want it to feel spacious, light, and invigorating, right? Like life-giving. That's simple. That's my energetic marker, right?
Yeah.
Make sense? And then I always, because I believe that the business has its own consciousness, and then I like to inquire and see, how does my business want to grow? What insight does it have to share with me? Because the business has its own energy, its own consciousness. So let's partner with it instead of superimpose our will or conclusions about how it wishes to grow. So how would it
That's brilliant.
Right?
I've never heard anybody talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
Truly brilliant.
Yes. Think of it this way. If we have a soul, the business has a soul. Ask the soul of the business how it wants to grow, right? Then I would ask, what is the Soulfluent Leadership Archetype that your business wishes you to step into next if it's different? And so that means what gifts and talents should you be leading with in the business? How are you going to be running the business? What is the messaging, the business model, the marketing? How is that going to maybe shift? Like are there any gears that you're going to have to be shifting? I find that when people are growing, there are two things that happen. Simplification is usually a better way to go. Less is more. So really focusing on honing in on the tasks that you as the CEO are really designed to be working on the business, not in it. And also probably streamlining your offers and creating more systems and processes. And also then the inner work is that oftentimes in growing, we tend to, especially if we did one-on-one work before, trading time for money, is to see how we can step out of that a little bit more. So the business model is more leverage. So you're not, you're not just spending your time to make money hour by hour, client by client. Right. And so streamlining how you're simplifying things. And sometimes that can look like refining the ideal client for you. Maybe, you've upgraded the level of client. Maybe they're a little bit more self-aware. Maybe they're a little less needy. Maybe they're more resourceful. Maybe they're, you meet them at a different point on their journey. Right? Maybe they're just further along than others. Like they're point A of where you meet them, where they're having a problem, and point B of where you're going to take them is different. Right. And so it's just really looking at, what is this going to look like in a simpler way, and so that you can also do it in a way where you're still taking really good care of yourself. Believe it or not, you can grow the business and work fewer hours because you're much more discerning and clear on where you're going, what it's going to ask of you, and where you need to be spending your time. So let me stop there first. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I want to check. You gave so much valuable questions and information. I know I'm probably going to watch this again and write them all down. But the visual image I really had, and I want to see if I'm experientially understanding what you're saying, is that, for people that are trying to get to 6 or even at 6, to me, it's like a light, and it's like big like this. And what you're saying is, like, if we have a flashlight with like a broad, beam, what you're telling people is through the simplification and the focus is we're going from out here, which actually takes, theoretically it's the same energy, but we're going to pretend it's more. You're saying we want you to bring down like to this one little focused beam. And so is that an experiential, like, am I understanding what you're saying through that analogy? Or did I miss the concept?
I guess it might seem counterintuitive, especially when in a world where people say dream big, go big, everything is big. But I think it's easy to think of, God, big means is the business going to swallow me whole? Am I going to have to hire all these team members? Am I going to have to do a ton of Facebook ads? Is this going to cost me? Am I going to be running a monster of a business that I hate? No, you can have a very life-giving business that's quite it's not about, I always tell people, it's not about working harder. It's about working a lot more efficiently and smarter about where will I get the greatest bang for my buck in terms of my energetic input to output, right? So it's reevaluating. And so especially after you cross six figures, people find that they have to shift in how they run the company. They have to shift looking at how they are I call it the stewards of a vision versus just, working in the business to keep it surviving. And then it's also about looking at those patterns, those habits, those ways of being that maybe got you here, but that are now not going to support you further, such as people pleasing, lax boundaries, saying more yeses when you really should be saying no, being willing to hire, even if it's a small team, virtually, to, be gatekeepers, to take more off your plate, and then trusting that people will do what they say that they're going to do. And so it's about really the embodiment of a different energy. That's just, it's a beautiful thing to watch, but it's kind of like an initiation, it's a shift. And it doesn't, oftentimes people ask me, well, do I need to completely overhaul the business to grow it a lot? No, it's actually, oftentimes it's more tweaking than it is completely changing. And that can include, even if you do one-on-one work, like you're a bookkeeper or you're a consultant, or like me, you work one-on-one with people, you can still create a transformational arm to your business that won't swallow you whole. Again, it's about asking those more precise questions to look at, what is the vision? Where do I want to go? What is the most efficient way to go there in alignment with my archetype, and that really supports my well-being and how I want to feel? Once you kind of tap into those, it becomes like the spine of, okay, well, these are my markers and my targets. What ways can I explore that feel good to get there? And then just trusting that it doesn't have to be a lot of stuff. And I think that can be also a little derailing. Really, it can be this simple. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that hard. You don't need a ton of offers. I have a colleague who made $1.5 million last year with 2 main offers. That's all. 2, they're group offers, like masterminds or something, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Simple, efficient, leveraged. I love it. That's my approach as well. Well, I can see, I've already taken you kind of over time, but I really, before we wrap up, I want to touch on a part of your work that we haven't gotten to talk about yet, which is how you actually read the Akashic records to help guide entrepreneurs. And I want to know how you got into this work as well.
Well, the short answer is it felt like it was by accident, but I think the true answer is it was just part of divine purpose and timing. So I started my business in 2010 as a health coach for 3 years, and oddly, helping people with their emotional eating really translated into where they were feeling malnourished in their lives, right? Oftentimes it was with their careers. And so that's where we focused a lot of our time, not on helping them eat more vegetables. And then, but I knew something was missing. I knew that was not my end all be all, but I had no idea what it was. And literally one day I got an email, one of those joint venture emails when somebody's promoting someone else. And I was like, what is this? It was called Heal Your Body Story. It was a program in the Akashic Records. And I was going through some stuff at the time. And I was like, I need to do this. And I did the 5-week program. It was incredibly potent and healing in the Akashic Records. And the person that did that healing later began to teach how to access the Akashic Records. And when I was like, how did I never hear of this thing? This is the world has the sea has parted over here. Oh my God, this is the missing piece. And so I took the class and I learned how to read my own records, right? Pretty much means connecting to your own soul guides. It's the Akashic Records are called your book of life. I call it the Harry Potter library, where there are all these records of your soul since creation. And you access your guides and you ask for clarity and to live your best life and to live a life on purpose. And then I learned how to read the records of others. And you can read the records of a person, a book, a business, anything that has consciousness has an Akashic record to it. And then I learned deeper healing techniques in the records as well, like shifting hooks and imprints and vows and all kinds of things. And then I did 200 free sessions, 100 free sessions in 2 months.
That's a
I was
lot.
like, I've got to practice. This is like, tough. And I realized that I really had no patience for relationship readings. I could not tell you exactly, like the pressure of telling you your purpose was just a little much for me. But I had an uncanny ability to channel information for people's businesses, marketing plans, direction, and then eventually really dense bodies of work. And that's the most fun I have, is when clients come to me and they're looking to, do their own body of work. And we get like frameworks and systems and titles of things and all those. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool, because I never know what's going to come out of my mouth. And so the Soulfluent body of work came to me in the fall of 2016, when my guides tricked me into saying, oh, we're just write a little book. I thought, oh, great, 20 pages. Well, 165 pages later, and a body of work later, the Soulfluent work began to emerge, and I had no idea what to do with it. I had a total nervous breakdown. I mean, seriously, it was not pretty. And this was before the Trump era, and so I had no interest in leadership. I had no idea how to explain it to people, and so it was very challenging to me. And I'm literally building the plane as I'm flying it, and learning every day as I go, which has been a learning process. And then the Soulfluent word actually was given to me in the Akashic Records a year ago. So I spent 3 years just kind of waiting. I'm like, come on already, I need a name for this thing. And so it's really helping people understand themselves at a soul level quite deeply. And so that's kind of how it all came to be. And I love the work. I'm fascinated by it every day. And it's an incredible energetic space of truth and love and healing and of empowerment.
I love it. It sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I love that you touched on that it's not always easy to walk your soul's path, because I think so many of us, when we're doing that, we find ourselves in that space. There's a lot of follow your purpose, do what you love, and it can be a challenging process. So I love that you shared that as well, because I think the more that we do share that part of our story, the more it gives other people permission to move gently and give themselves more grace, and as they're following their own soul's journey as well.
Yes, I've had many dark nights of the soul, 3 very big, massive career changes, and it continues to evolve, so it's a constant coming back and trusting the process, trusting yourself, living day by day. And I always would say, look, if I just keep going, eventually I'm going to find my way. I just have to put one foot in front of the other. And that's pretty much what got me to find my husband, to move to California from very cold New York, to do this work and to not give up, really.
That's beautiful. You're the, you are the work. Like, that's just what my brain is thinking of. I mean, you embody the Soulfluent leadership model.
Oh, thank you. I don't think that at all, but thank you.
Yeah. Everything you believe, you've brought to life. You've lived it, and now you're helping other people that want to do what you've already done. And it's just beautiful. Like, that's the 360. You're a living model of it, and I don't even have words. Like, I don't.
Thank you. You're being very kind, because to me, to me, embodiment of this feels so much bigger than what I feel I've accomplished so far. However, the work has massive potential to go in many different directions. The whole thought leadership of Oracle deck and multiple books and certifications and training, all those bigger things, programs that you see, that it can go far and wide. And I've just learned to stay in my own lane, stay in this moment, and just take one step at a time.
Yes. Well, I'm going to leave it at that, because I think you just left us a beautiful segue to wrap up our conversation for everyone. One step at a time, and stay your course. So Thank you so much for sharing your work with us today. And we'll just throw up, if you want to find out your quiz, as Priscilla shared, she's a mystic. I'm a mystic. Go take your quiz and then tell us in the comments, wherever you wind up watching this. Just drop a comment, let us know what you are, and share what you learned about yourself from going through the quiz. I know I would love to hear it, and I'm sure Priscilla would love to hear from you guys and know as well.
I don't bite, as you can see. I'm super friendly and pouncy, so it's good.
Biting is not part of your good business energy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Priscilla. It's been a pleasure to have you and a joy. So thank you for the honor.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Oh, I forgot to check the comments.